Gracias. Gracias y bienvenidos. Gracias y bienvenidos a Inform, Inmigrantes y sus aliados, hablando sobre las elecciones 2020. El tema de hoy es inmigración, lo básico sobre inmigración. Pero antes de avanzar, preguntémonos, ¿quiénes son los inmigrantes? Inmigrantes que vienen de diferentes países, inmigrantes que llegan de diferentes formas. Pero antes, miremos qué es lo que han dicho los líderes en los Estados Unidos sobre nosotros.
It helps to remember that America's immigrant history made us who we are. Amid all the complications of policy, may we never forget that immigration is a blessing and a strength. Public debate on the matter can get pretty sharp. That's not exclusive to this issue or these times.
¡Wow! Increíble de creer que el presidente Bush también era parte del Partido Republicano. Dos partidos republicanos diferentes, el del presidente Bush y el del presidente Trump, que tenemos en este momento, donde lo único que la comunidad inmigrante está recibiendo es odio, como por ejemplo la comunidad del TPS está a riesgo de perder su estatus migratorio. La comunidad que tiene DACA también está a riesgo de perder su estatus migratorio, y puedo continuar mencionando las personas que vienen con asilo político o personas que vienen escapándose del peligro en sus países y buscando protección en los Estados Unidos. Pero también es importante entender nuestras historias, y por eso yo quiero compartir con ustedes, por ejemplo, quién soy yo. Yo soy una persona que llegué aquí a los Estados Unidos de El Salvador, llegué en 1998, como muchos de ustedes, buscando oportunidades, buscando el futuro, un mejor futuro para mi familia, para mis hijos. Como la mayoría de inmigrantes, he hecho trabajos diferentes, como trabajar en una fábrica, trabajar de limpieza, trabajar repartiendo leche, y al mismo tiempo creciendo la familia y también tomando clases, tratando de aprender inglés y muchas cosas más. Pero lo que estamos mirando el día de hoy es de que solamente nos echan la culpa de todas las cosas malas que están pasando en los Estados Unidos, nos echan la culpa de todo lo que sucede. Y eso es motivado por el presidente que tenemos en este momento. Y para que sepan de lo que estoy hablando, vamos a ver este video.
My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are the resources they have requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before.
Montón de odio que sale de la boca del presidente en contra de nuestras comunidades. Pero él no solamente está hablando, también está tomando acción. Si ustedes se han fijado, desde que entró a la presidencia, ha tratado de cortar el TPS, ha tratado de eliminar el programa DACA, ha suspendido la llegada de refugiados a los Estados Unidos, suspendió la llegada también de personas de países que son musulmanes. Y durante una emergencia de un huracán que sucedió en Puerto Rico, decidió detener la ayuda para todas estas personas que estaban sufriendo. Y si eso consideran que es extremista, también el presidente hasta ha tratado de vender la isla de Puerto Rico. Solamente se lo repito, ha tratado de vender la isla de Puerto Rico. Si eso no es suficiente para prepararse y salir a votar en noviembre 3, no sé qué más lo puede hacer. Pero antes de todo, vamos a descubrir algunos mitos. Siempre en Inform hablamos de mito y descubrimos la información correcta. Así es que vamos a descubrir los mitos del día de hoy.
Hi, welcome back to Informed, or welcome if you are new. Today we'll be talking about immigration. I'm Ileana, and I am the daughter of 2 immigrants.
And I'm Jose Palma from El Salvador and also a TPS recipient.
I'm Edwin, also from El Salvador and a TPS recipient.
And I'm Jared.
My grandparents were immigrants from Ireland and Puerto Rico, and I am a friend and ally to many immigrants.
And as you have likely gathered, each one of us has a very intimate and very personal relationship with the topic of immigration. So it bothers us that there is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misinformation that's given to us as consumers of information. And one of the more prevalent misconceptions is that immigrants are criminals.
Yeah, so when comparing FBI crime data and estimates from the Pew Research Center, the Marshall Project in 2019 actually found that there's no connection between the rise of undocumented immigrants in an area and the rise of crime.
Yeah, they actually found that in certain populations in which they collected data between, violent and property crime, there was actually a decrease between the years of 2007 and 2016. And I feel like we could probably understand the reason for that, where there's far more to lose for an immigrant than there is an American citizen.
Which is so contrary, sorry Edwin, but it's so contrary to the messages that we get from our president, from the Republican Party, from really anyone who's telling us immigrants are dangerous, right?
Yeah, I think you could even see it in I have friends who are undocumented, and when I was growing up and their parents would be giving us rides, obviously they'd be driving with fake licenses, but because of that, they would drive super slow almost everywhere, making sure that they would attract no attention from police, because if you get pulled over and they ask you for a license, then you don't have one, then you get taken to a police department where they find out that you are undocumented, and then they turn you over to ICE, and then you go back to your country.
Right, so
and then even things like that, then that's not even talking about things like theft or murder, right? Just things like a speeding ticket would destroy your life.
Little
Exactly.
things, yeah.
Things that if I get pulled over for a speeding ticket, I'll just be like, well,
Right.
sucks. But these people have to worry about such little things like that potentially ruining their lives.
Right, and for citizens, right, citizens are far more likely to commit a crime, and in fact, violent crimes, right, than immigrants of any sort, documented or undocumented. Immigrants are much less likely to commit a crime than U.S. citizens.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's very important for our friends and allies, as we are calling people, and also our people from our communities, to really start thinking. We are in election season, and what we are hearing is that immigrants are becoming, as I always say, like the soccer ball. We get kicked wherever they need us. And President Trump actually has been taking immigrants and immigration as a way to divide the country and to insert hate and the divisionism in the United States. So I think it's very important to keep informed and also thinking about what's going on right now and thinking about this election, because what we are hearing is just hate against immigrants, when in reality we know, study by study, it shows different than what we are hearing in the news nowadays.
Just to reinforce that point, I feel like we should roll a clip here of Trump
That would be nice.
saying some of those things, right? Because he says them so often. So let's just roll clip.
We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy. The dumbest laws, as I said before, the dumbest laws on immigration in the world.
I mean, yeah, people are coming looking for, better their life, better their family's life, and just looking for the way to get some jobs and help their family. That's kind of like the main focus. It's not like coming like, okay, I'm here and the freedom and I can do whatever I want. It's usually like working hard and making sure things are getting better for their families.
Yeah.
And some of the students that I taught in Chelsea, where you guys are from, right? A lot of them would talk about why they immigrated to the United States, and it was to escape crime. Yes. They were here to be in a safer place, and they wanted safety, so they came here.
A lot of people lose their families to crime, and then feel like they have to go somewhere where they can start over.
At the very least, we could respect immigrants, you know?
Yeah.
There's also the idea that immigrants are freeloaders, which is interesting,
Freeloaders.
considering how hardworking pretty much all of us are.
No, yeah. That one is also another one very interesting. Like, like the way we have written is like, comes to take advantages of our welfare system. That's another misconception that many people are talking about. And I think it's coming mostly from the president that we have nowadays. Everything, whatever is happening, is blaming immigrants. And I think there are two strategies in the United States that try to use it. And this one fit very perfectly. One is that some media and some leaders, like President Trump, try to make you feel afraid of people who don't look like you, make you afraid of others. And then there is also that idea that we don't have enough to be feeding everyone. When in reality, like we have here some data and says, American Voice did a study, and it says that in 2017, immigrants with TPS and DACA and undocumented workers pay, let's make sure I'm saying it the right way, $405.4 billion.
Way to be.
So can you say it just to make sure people don't understand?
$405.4 billion.
In taxes.
Change. Got that in my back pocket.
But this is the other contradiction to what people believe. People, undocumented workers, are paying taxes for things that they cannot get. Yes. For example, when we talk about, let's say, SNAP, for example. SNAP, if you want to, in order to qualify for SNAP, you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. People don't qualify for Medicaid. Even nowadays, during COVID, many people are talking about unemployment stuff. Undocumented workers don't qualify for unemployment. Yeah. Just to put a few examples before I can go on and on and on, but yeah, I'm sure you guys have also some other.
Well, even your statuses, right? Like, so TPS status, you guys don't get any of the benefits that they're talking about in terms of the bailout funds during COVID. That's not provided to TPS recipients or DACA.
And then also even things like college tuition for students. Things like that don't get covered for TPS recipients. I had scholarships that I could not accept because I wasn't a permanent resident or a citizen.
It is amazing to me how in a country that is so money driven, if that number doesn't bother you, like think about putting so much work, your labor, your time, and your literal money. Yeah. The thing that drives us in this country, unfortunately.
And let's go back to one state, Florida. And Florida, you ready?
Yeah.
$10.4 billion in taxes get from TPS, DACA, and undocumented workers. So just think about it. When people are saying like, oh, people are coming here, I don't know what they're talking about, because study by study, and I think I am repeating very often this, because there are not only one source, but many that show that people are contributing more than what they are receiving.
So really then, immigrants are paying for citizens to receive those benefits, right? Yeah. So the immigrants are actually doing the work for U.S. citizens so that they can get things like SNAP or
Medicaid. There is enough money for, in order to be enough money. People are contributing to this.
To conclude my thought from before, imagine putting that much work, time, and energy in, and money, to not receive those benefits at all. Yeah, right. Like that is unheard of to anybody like us, like citizens. To think of something like that, where we would be putting so much of ourselves just to benefit others and not to benefit ourselves, like.
Yeah, and some of that tax money also probably goes to like Border Patrol. To keeping us out.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But the third myth.
Yes, which like you said before, is like the opposite of the freeloader idea, right?
Yeah.
But somehow Trump maintains both of them. Yes. That one, immigrants are freeloaders, and then two, immigrants are stealing our jobs. So like those both can't exist at the same time. It's impossible, and yet somehow they're able to assert this, and people buy it, which is nuts. But also, I mean, it's what happens when these like ideas get a mythology behind them that somehow seems supported. And places like Fox News help contribute to that support of those things. So in the US, immigrants represent about 15% of the general US workforce, right? And they account for a quarter of all entrepreneurs in the United States. So
Wow.
15%, but a quarter of all newly created businesses and jobs. I mean, Jose and I both know someone who has a job here in Massachusetts who has 30 people employed under him.
30, and the funny part is that he's the one with TPS and at risk of losing his immigration status when the group of people he employed are U.S. citizens and permanent residents.
Right?
That's another example.
So like imagine if he loses his status, that's 30 jobs that go away. Right? That's something that he created that then this myth that like somehow he's stealing jobs. No, he's creating the jobs, right? But then also for those lower wage jobs that people take on, a lot of like very newly arrived immigrants who don't come from wealthier families come to the United States, and then they work jobs that actually we don't fill in the United States. So these are like difficult jobs, oftentimes involving a lot of like manual labor, or they're at like minimum wage that people take on in communities so as to contribute to the community, build their family so that they can get better and better levels of education, to get better and better jobs. But it's not like people are jumping at these jobs. You know, it's not like, oh my God, I can't wait to go work at, at a food preparation place, you know? Or I can't wait to go work, as a janitor in this place, right?
I can't wait to go be a roofer in Boston in mid-February.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Those folks taking on those jobs are filling a need in the American workforce, and we like actually need people to take on those jobs. And so really they're providing something for us that we don't have in the United States.
And the ways in which our American society thanks immigrants, because immigrants should be thanked, is by using really dehumanizing language. And so this isn't necessarily a myth, but it is just something that we've all noticed, how normalized and somewhat embedded dehumanizing language is in minority communities. How people like Trump will use dehumanizing language so often that it just seems like something that should be accepted or doesn't have to be challenged. And I mean, it's gross, but growing up, my peers and I are, if not the children of immigrants ourselves. Even though I am not, I had plenty of friends who are. And there was one day when I was in 8th grade where some of my classmates were throwing words around that were really ugly and derogatory, and one of my friends kind of blew up. And without asking us if we wanted to hear what he had to say, he just told us what he had to say. And he told us that he was an immigrant, to not forget that he was an immigrant, and that his experience coming here was ugly. That he slept in the back of a truck with pee and vomit all over his clothes and on his blanket, and he was nestled in between his younger brother and his mom. And I can't even imagine what that might feel like when you're going through that, or how scared you might be that experience will not end, or that you'll be harmed physically or otherwise on the way to your destination. And once you're at your destination, you continue to be berated and dehumanized by people who know what your experience is like. But because that experience is so painful, there is an attempt at distancing ourselves from it. And it's easy to do that, I suppose, when the leader of the free world delights in dehumanizing immigrants. It's so intentional, and he goes out of his way. You had mentioned in a conversation prior to this, where an interviewer will use the word undocumented, and he'll go out of his way to be like, I'm legal. It's like, ew, buddy, like, it's just so obvious. It's so transparent, Chief. It truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing that we have to understand, and I think this is very important, especially for people from our communities, is that when he's doing that, he's achieving his goal.
Yeah.
He wants to make sure people are hating to each other just because one have paper and the other one doesn't. And he's using that to divide us. And he's using some other issues that we will talk about and inform issues that are sometimes are up in the air than the reality that that we all are facing. The reality is that the word, when he's describing and talking bad about someone, let's say from Mexico, he's not really talking about the Mexican. He's talking about people that look like you and me, probably a little bit different than Jared. Yeah. That's what he's talking about, and what he's trying to do is to divide us, to make sure, oh, I have paper, you don't. So I am different than you, I'm better than you. When in reality, we know we are facing the same issues. You kids most likely will go to the same school as my kids. Right. And we probably will work in the same places. We will be in the same neighborhood. When they are screwing me, they are screwing you, whether you have paper or not. So very important to pay attention.
And what's scary for him in that is what happens if
we
if the lower middle class white guy, right, and the lower middle class Salvadoran guy get together, right, and then we say, oh wait, our interests are the same, right? We actually do want more like social protections. We actually do want to unionize. We actually do want better wages, right? Once we figure that out, people like Trump and billionaires and millionaires are kind of screwed for a while, right? Now, I actually think that eventually it would be better for everyone, right? Because once you have a better society, everyone benefits from that. We have so much in common. I have more in common with you, Palma, than I would ever have with Trump, right?
Even with a language barrier. Yeah. Fifth myth.
Fifth myth.
Not necessarily a myth, but just the idea that, or I guess it is a myth, that immigrants are lazy or disinterested because they are not fluent in English, which is...
This myth really gets me, I think, because I'm an English teacher. And I've had the chance to teach a bunch of really, really intelligent kids and adults English. And really, I think that this gets to kind of like this perception in the United States that like speaking other languages, one, is easy, and then two, that we do it. Right? Like in the United States, we are the most monolingual developed country in the world.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it is pretty. Yeah, like I personally feel embarrassed by it when I think about what my Spanish language education was as a kid, right? Yeah. Like I had teachers that didn't even speak Spanish that were teaching me Spanish. And the rest of the world is about 50% of the population is bilingual or multilingual. Right? So 20% here, 50% the rest of the world. And yet now people come here to the United States, they're learning English, they can communicate with you, but they have an accent. Oh my God, an accent, right? And like that's them communicating with you. That's them trying to build something in connection with you. And instead you're like, no, like, oh, you have an accent. Speak English.
Yeah, and it's an issue of racism, like you had mentioned before. It's an othering of anybody who doesn't look like you or sound like you. Right. And so if my English is not polished enough for your liking, if it's not formal enough, if my vocabulary is not as wide as yours, it's an issue. Mm-hmm. You see, if you look at a white man, he speak English, and he speak French too, he's somehow classy, right? But my dad, thick Puerto Rican accent, some people might call him stupid. In fact, people have. Mm-hmm. People have called my father a spick because he has a really thick accent. And he's like, I speak English fluently. I don't know what else you want from me, chief. Like, I don't know. I can't just erase this accent that, frankly, he loves. I love my dad's accent. He loves his accent, too. And he's not going to throw it away or try to assimilate or cover it up because other people are bothered by it.
Yeah. And this is the other thing, and I think we are seeing it, all over the place throughout the Trump administration. He's saying something to the cameras and doing something in the back. When I came to the United States in 1998, I remember I came here to Somerville, Massachusetts, and there used to be a few places where you can go and learn English. But instead of providing more programs for people to learn the language, they have been cutting the budget to those programs. Mm-hmm. So this is the double standard that I think some people have to pay attention in the United States, that sometimes something is said to the public and then something different is happening in reality. So I think that is something to keep an eye on, especially for those of people in our communities, and also for those are, allies. Yeah, pay attention about it. What's going on? And if you're planning to stay home, this is one of the issues that is very important for us and for everyone in our places. So, we need to keep an eye on it.
Edwin had mentioned before this conversation that the cost of his mother's English classes were more than tuition.
Yeah.
Wild. But you had also said something, Jared, before this conversation that was beautifully worded.
I was thinking about it as both of you were talking. Is just the that immigrants come here, right? And to me, to show love is to do work on behalf of someone or something, right? And so immigrants come here to the United States, and they are learning and doing work to be able to contribute to their society. Like Palma said, they're looking for opportunities to do that, to create more for us and with us. So when you hear someone who has an accent, it's demonstrating to you the work that they're putting in for you and your community, right? They're demonstrating their love for you and your community. And so for us to then somehow degrade that or say oh, this is a bad thing. No, that is love. That work on our behalf is love. Yeah. And I honestly, when I speak in Spanish, I screw up all the time, and people are so patient with me.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, cuando estoy intentando a hablar en español, ustedes están diciendo, oh, guy, Dios mío, right? But you guys also have this patience with me and an appreciation. Oh, yes. He's trying right now, right? He's trying to communicate with me. And that attempt to understand each other, to contribute to each other, that is so goddamn American. At least to me, right? And I feel like those are the ideals we want to embody, and immigrants embody that in everything they do. Yeah.
I think we just ask that we remember to have compassion always, to remember that people are human before they are anything else. So before a person is an undocumented immigrant, they are a human being. And with that, stay healthy. Stay safe, and please stay informed.
The wrap-up. This is our show in 2 minutes. Our show is Informed. Immigrants and Allies talk the 2020 election. This week's show is on immigration. Who are we? Our nation, the USA, is a nation of immigrants. We have a monument dedicated to them. We so revere immigration that even recent Republicans who made some pretty horrible errors have asserted that immigration equals a good. People like our very own shoe-dodging George Bush. But that long-standing attitude has changed with the Trump administration. They have used racism and xenophobia to dehumanize and attack immigrants of all kinds. They have enacted Muslim travel bans, treated immigrants at the border horribly, and attempted to cancel long-standing protections for immigrants like DACA and TPS. They even tried to sell Puerto Rico to the highest bidder. Puerto Ricans aren't even immigrants. So, we need to clear the air on some of this administration's lies about immigration and immigrants. 1. Unlike what the clear arch-villain Stephen Miller might assert, immigrants aren't criminals. In fact, they are some of the most law-abiding people among us. And that is true of documented and undocumented immigrants. They just want to live and work in peace. Check the numbers. They're more peaceful than citizens, especially than those proud white supremacists. 2. Immigrants aren't freeloaders or welfare drainers. They work, and they work hard. Immigrants can't collect many of the benefits that normal welfare recipients would receive because they aren't eligible. In fact, shocker, their taxes pay for citizens. They should be calling citizens the freeloaders, asking for their money back. 3. The third lie should be mutually exclusive to the second, but this is how hate works. Immigrants don't steal our jobs. Yes, jobs are going away in some fields, but that is because of technological advancements, not immigrants. In fact, immigrants disproportionately create new jobs by being entrepreneurs. So your cousin should stop blaming Juan Pablo for his inability to leave his parents' basement, and should start telling Tron or Siri to go back home. Immigrants work hard in our communities. They show us their love by working on our community's behalf. Isn't that what we want and need in the U.S. today? People dedicated to their own, their families, and their community's betterment. Well, then vote the hate away this election. If we don't, there are dark days ahead. Show up and support those whose lives are at risk. So, stay healthy, stay safe, stay informed, and vote. See you next time.
Hi, my name's Emily, and this is Informed. Tonight, we're joined by Pablo Alvarado. He is the co-executive director of the National Day Laborer Organizing Network. Thank you for joining us, Pablo.
Thank you for inviting me.
To start, let's talk a little bit about what you do and how you became involved with Endelon.
Sure.
How did you find yourself involved with the organization?
Well, I migrated to the United States in the early 90s. And just like everyone else, I worked as a day laborer for 6 years. I did all kinds of jobs. And at a given moment, I was working at a factory when I heard a public service announcement of an organization that was looking for volunteers to teach people how to read and write in Spanish because they were having a difficult time learning English because they didn't know how to read in their own language. So I went, I volunteered, and I began teaching a class in Pasadena. And half of my students actually were day laborers. So I began, during the class, I began, essentially learning about their experiences, and I began sharing my experiences as a worker as well. And, that led to organizing. So the next time that they came to the classroom, they were telling me, hey, the police came by and they asked us to leave the neighborhood. Is there anything that we can do? And the following week, I went and met with the police and we talked. Then one of them said, I was hired and I didn't get paid. What can I do? So I began helping to recover unpaid wages. And every time that workers began sharing their experiences, something that I relate to because it's something that I have lived. My wages have been stolen in the past as well. And I have seen the presence of police in street corners. So it was something that was very, very clear to me that I needed to do something.
So as you know, on Informed, we are discussing the upcoming election, and immigration and immigration reform is a hot topic. And as an immigrant yourself, I'm curious about what your thoughts are on the upcoming election and discussions that people are having and thoughts that they're having as they think about the best candidate for them.
Sure. Look, I came to this country in the early 90s, to California, to Los Angeles. And when I came, I was still able to obtain a driver's license with, essentially with my birth certificate from El Salvador. But then we lost it because it was taken away, So I was undocumented for a while. Then I obtained my TPS, temporary protected status. Then I married a U.S. citizen, and I was able to status to legal permanent resident. And in 2008, in October of 2008 to be specific, I became a naturalized citizen. So I have gone through the entire spectrum of what it is to be a migrant and becoming, a U.S. citizen. I've gone through all of that process. And at the same time that I have gone through all of that process, I have seen how the circumstances, the politics around migration have worsened. They haven't gotten any better. And unfortunately, I have never seen in my entire life as an activist here in the United States, I have never seen a situation like the one that we have right now. In my view, as an immigrant, what's at stake, it's not just our families, it's not the future of migrants, or what happens with the issue of migration or the economy. This is about humanity. I mean, this election that's coming, it's gonna be, you know, I think very consequential, but not just for a short period of time. This is a generational shift that the country is going through. And at this point, you know, what it is that capitalism is being questioned, and capitalism is not responding to the needs of people. And Americans are talking about it at all levels. So I don't know what's coming, you know, but in terms of politics, but I am afraid when I see people with arms marching in the streets, going to the protests that we organize, you know, with guns. I mean, the killing of Black people in the streets. So, I mean, that's something that I definitely see and understand, you know. And if we keep going that way, no one is going to be safe. If we keep going that way, our country is going to go into a civil war. And I come from a country where there's been a civil war, and it's not fun. You know, you have parents, you have fathers in different ends of the political spectrum with their children. So they're shooting at each other in a civil war. That's exactly what happens. You see your loved ones, you see your friends die. So nobody wins when there is violence. So, and in my view, if we can make this election highly effective so that we don't go into a civil war, you know, and all Americans from all walks of life go out to vote, to me, that's what's going to make a difference. So,
something that you said that unfortunately, I feel like I've heard it a lot of times before, is that this is the state that our country's in is something that many people have never seen before. And I think that that's really telling to hear that so many times, because it just shows how important this election is that we're in a place that it's unprecedented. And this election is so important, and it is really important that people get out and vote. And like you said, even for people who can't vote, that voters do their part on behalf of those people.
right.
So as I said, we are doing this show to help voters be informed. And so if you could say something to voters, and something that you would want them to be informed about, one thing regarding immigration, what would that be?
Look, it's not good to see the world from a Black and white perspective. But there are some things that are very basic and essential for people to understand, and these things have to do with right and wrong. We know that when Black people are getting killed out there without any due process, when a police officer is not just a police officer, but the jury, the judge, and even the executioner, that's not good for society. It's wrong. So vote against that. You know that caging little kids, putting them in cages, taking them away from their moms and dads, 5-year-old kids, putting them in cages? Really? Vote against that. You know? So we all know that lying is not a good thing. And we know that there are so many lies going around, and that there are people in power right now whose way of life is actually lying every day, every single day. Vote against the lies, you know. We know that, exploiting workers is a bad thing. And that if the most vulnerable among ourselves are not doing well, then no one is. And if you're a Christian, that's essentially, Jesus always had a preferential option for the poor. So do it for the poor. Go out there and vote for the poor on behalf of the poor. We know that deporting people, splitting families is wrong. We know that using the police to enforce immigration law doesn't make anybody safe. It's the other way around, because migrants don't report crimes when they are either victims or witnesses because they are afraid. And nowadays, that's exactly what's happening. We know that that is wrong. Well, go out and vote against all of that stuff. We know that, we saw in Charlottesville, we saw the tiki torches, and we saw, very overt racists going out there and saying, Jews will not replace us, with swastikas, and you could see it. It's in daylight, you can see it. So go out and vote against that. Vote for justice. Vote for what you think is going to make the country better. So this is the time to see right and wrong. I know that there are so many things in the middle of what's right and wrong and what's black and white, but the analogies are very clear this time around. It's about voting on what's right and against what's wrong. And it's one of those moments when, if we let it go, the ugly will be normalized. And believe me, if we let it go like that, the country will be unrecognizable very soon. Very soon.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Pablo. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I think that anyone watching and hearing what you're saying is that you just need to vote. This is when if you feel like you don't have the power to change something, this is when you have it. So thank you so much, and we can hope for the best for our upcoming election.
No problem. Thank you, Emily. Take care. Bye-bye. Good night.
Ya estamos llegando al final de este programa, pero espero que usted haya aprendido quiénes somos los inmigrantes en este país y que comience a hacer los planes para poder ir a defender la comunidad el día de las elecciones, noviembre 3, muy importante. Usted pudo mirar y escuchar al presidente y cómo se refiere a nuestra comunidad, pero usted puede hacer la diferencia. Muchas personas como yo no podemos votar, pero confiamos en que usted, que puede votar, va a tomar acción. Gracias, manténgase saludable, seguro, y nos vemos en el próximo episodio.